Life in Britain is changing for many people. It feels like a new kind of pressure, which we call the Great Squeeze. This means that everyday things like food or heating are becoming more expensive. It also means that some services, like local shops, are closing. This book will show how these changes affect ordinary people across the United Kingdom. We will follow 3 different lives for one normal day. First, we meet Aisha. She is a doctor working in a hospital in Manchester, a busy city. She is 28 years old. Next, we meet the Davies family. Mark, who is 42, works as an electrician. His wife, Sarah, is 39 and works part-time in a shop. They live with their 2 children, Emma and Jack, in Wales. Our third person is Robert. He is 68 years old and used to work at the post office. Now he is retired. He lives alone in a quiet village. These 3 people live in different places and have different lives, but they all feel the effects of the Great Squeeze. We will spend an ordinary Tuesday with Aisha, the Davies family, and Robert. We will see their morning, afternoon, and evening. Their stories will help us understand the bigger picture of what is happening in Britain. It shows how people are strong and find new ways to manage their daily lives when things get harder. 2. A hard morning. Aisha's morning started early in Manchester. Her shared flat was busy. People in the kitchen talked about small things, like whose yogurt it was or if the heating could stay on a little longer. These small talks hid bigger money worries. Aisha's train journey to the hospital was expensive. Each trip cost £4.20. This price went up by almost 5% recently, adding about £450 to her yearly travel costs. In general, train fares in England had gone up by 37% in the last 10 years, much more than people's salaries. Aisha, a junior doctor, earned £37,000 a year. But after paying her student loan, £520 for rent, and £180 for travel each month, more than half of her money was already gone. She boarded the 7:42 a.m. train holding a coffee cup. This coffee, a small treat at £2.80, was bought because she knew her 12-hour shift meant no time for a proper meal later. She saw many people like her on the train, all going to work in the city. 60 miles away, in a Welsh town called Verbit, Sarah Davies had a busy morning. It was 7:30 a.m. She carefully packed lunches for her children, 8-year-old Emma and 11-year-old Jack. She thought about what they liked, what was healthy, and how much it cost. Her weekly food shop used to be £80, but now it was around £120. She always bought cheaper supermarket brands and looked for special offers. She noticed that food boxes were smaller, like the cereal box that used to last 10 days, now only lasted 7. The orange juice carton was smaller too, but the price stayed the same. This was called shrinkflation, and it made budgeting harder. Mark Davies, Sarah's husband, left for work even earlier, before 7 a.m. He drove his 5-year-old van to different electrical jobs across South Wales. His job as an electrician was important and in demand, but his wages had not really increased since 2015. He earned £28,000 last year. This meant that with rising prices, his actual buying power was less than it was 10 years ago. For families like the Davies, these changes were not slow. They happened suddenly. The shop cost more, the mortgage went up, or a child needed new shoes and they had to find the money. Sarah also worked part-time at a clothing shop. She earned £640 a month. This money, once extra, was now essential for their household. Her 16-hour contract did not offer sick pay or a pension, making their financial situation feel unsure. 3. Life in the countryside. Robert woke up early in his quiet village in Suffolk. His cottage was old, bought many years ago for a small amount of money. Now similar houses cost a lot more, but this did not help Robert. He lived on a state pension, which was about £185 each week. His daily life was calm, but he had to make many careful calculations about money. The village used to have a post office where Robert worked for over 30 years. It closed in 2019. This was a sad day for many people in the village. 2 years later, the bank also closed its doors. This meant Robert could not get his pension or do his banking easily anymore. He missed the local services that made life simpler. The closest bank was in Hadley, 7 miles away. Getting there was a challenge. A bus went there only 2 times a day, making it hard to plan a trip. A return ticket on the bus cost £8.40, which was a lot of money for a short journey. Because of this, Robert often used his old car, a Ford Focus from 2006. He hoped it would stay roadworthy for many more years. To collect his pension, Robert had to drive a 12-mile round trip to Hadley. He also used this trip to do his main shopping, as the village shop had closed some years ago. It was difficult to buy everyday things and manage his money when all these important services were so far away. The journey took time and cost money for petrol. Living in the countryside was more expensive than living in a town in many ways. Rural homes often had to pay around £3,400 more each year than homes in cities. This extra cost came from things like transport and heating. Robert's heating bill was a big problem during the colder months. In winter, it cost £180 every month. This huge amount took almost half of his weekly pension money. His old cottage had thick walls and lovely single-glass windows. These old features looked charming, but they made the house very cold in winter. No government help had come to fix this thermal problem. These changes made Robert's life much more difficult. The quiet village he loved felt more isolated with each passing year. He spent his mornings planning how to get his money and buy food, always making sure he had enough for his heating and other important needs. Life in the countryside was peaceful, but it also brought its own set of daily challenges for people like Robert. 4. A busy afternoon. Aisha's afternoon at Manchester Royal Infirmary was very busy and stressful. Her ward, respiratory medicine, did not have enough nurses. There were 2 fewer nurses than needed. This made patient care difficult and reactive, not planned. Aisha's shifts often finished late, and she had to do patient paperwork at home. She saw many types of patients. Some were older people with long illnesses made worse by bad housing. Others were working adults with mental health problems, often due to money worries. Young people also came with high anxiety and depression. The hospital itself had problems from a lack of resources. Aisha used old computer screens that often froze, causing delays. The hospital building needed repairs. The heating system needed fixing for 3 years, but there was no money. Aisha's basic yearly salary was £37,000. This sounds good, but she had to pay back student loans and cover high living costs in Manchester. After recent pay negotiations, her salary had only just returned to the same buying power it had in 2008. This meant she felt like she was standing still, despite her hard work and long hours. She often felt that good patient care required personal sacrifice because the system did not offer enough support. Later that afternoon, Sarah Davies went to her local Tesco supermarket. This shopping trip was a very careful task. She had a list and checked every price. The price of milk had gone up from £1.15 to £1.45. A loaf of bread now cost £1.20, not 85 pence. A pack of chicken breast that used to feed her family for 2 meals now only fed them for 1. Sarah often had to buy cheaper cuts of meat or vegetarian alternatives. She noticed that food packages were getting smaller, but the price stayed the same. This was called shrinkflation. For example, a jar of pasta sauce used to be 500 grams. Now it was only 420 grams. A cereal box also had less inside. This made it hard to plan the family's food budget accurately. Sarah bought 2 small items instead of 1 large one sometimes. She always checked the price per unit to find the best value. She even switched between different supermarkets each week, looking for promotions that could save her 10 or 15 pounds. Her daughter, Emma, who was 8 years old, had started to notice these changes. Birthday parties often had homemade cakes now. Family treats like cinema visits or eating out had become rare. These small changes meant a gradual shrinking of childhood possibilities. Brexit also continued to affect food. Sarah noticed less choice in the supermarket. Some products simply disappeared. The cheapest tinned tomatoes had almost doubled in price. These extra costs added up, making shopping a constant and difficult challenge for Sarah and her family. 5. The price of things. The high costs of everyday things are a big problem for many people in Britain. There are several reasons why prices keep going up. One main reason is that salaries have not increased much for a long time. Since 2008, most people's pay has stayed almost the same, but essential costs have risen a lot. For example, housing, transport, and energy bills are much more expensive now, sometimes by over 50 or 80%. This leaves people with less money for other needs. Another factor is the general economic situation in the United Kingdom. The country's economic growth has slowed down. This affects how much money the government has for public services. The government also spends many billions of pounds each year paying back its debts. Recently, interest rates went up, making it harder for many people to pay their home loans. All these issues together create a living standard squeeze. This means families have to cut back on spending, even if they are working. Changes in the UK's relationship with the European Union, known as Brexit, also play a part. It has become harder to bring food into the country from Europe. More paperwork and delays at borders make food more expensive. Also, shops may have fewer choices. Some foods that were common before are now harder to find or cost more. New border checks also add to the costs of imported food each year. Life in villages is changing with fewer local services. Many places people relied on have closed. Village post offices have closed, with thousands shutting down across rural Britain since 2010. Banks also left, so people must travel far to find one. Village shops have closed because they cannot compete with bigger supermarkets. Even local doctors' surgeries have fewer opening hours. Pubs, once important meeting places, have also closed. This means people in villages feel more isolated and struggle to get basic services. These problems show a bigger picture of Britain's economy. Some parts of the country, like London, have recovered well. But other areas, especially older industrial towns and rural regions, have struggled. They have lost jobs and new ones have not come. This creates big differences across the country and makes life hard for many families. 6. Family time. The day ended for the Davies family. Sarah came home from work at 6 in the evening. Mark was already there. He had helped the children with homework. He also made dinner for everyone. It was pasta with a sauce Sarah made from tomatoes grown in their garden. It cost about £4 to feed Emma, Jack, Mark, and Sarah. If they bought takeaway food, it would cost £15 or £20. They could only afford takeaway once a month. Even then, they looked for discounts. After dinner, the children talked about their day. Emma told them some friends were going to a big holiday park. Jack asked about a fun activity center he saw advertised at school. Mark and Sarah listened carefully. They wanted their children to be happy, but they also needed to explain about money. Emma's gymnastics cost £8 each time, so £32 a month. Jack's football was £15 a month. They also needed money for his travel and gear. In the evening, they watched TV. Their internet cost £35 a month. It was important for homework. They shared a TV streaming service with Sarah's sister to save money. Later, when the children were asleep, Mark and Sarah talked about their budget. Their house loan would cost more soon. It would go up by £156 every month. Sarah thought about working more hours, but then she would need to pay more for childcare. It was a difficult choice. Far away in his small village, Robert spent his evening alone. The local pub, the Crown Inn, closed a few years ago. It used to be a place where everyone met. Now there were fewer places for people to talk and share news. Robert ate a simple dinner. It cost about £2.50. He had to plan his meals carefully so food did not go to waste. It was hard to buy food for just one person. Most food packages were for families. The internet in his village was slow, so Robert watched normal TV or listened to the radio. He sometimes called his daughter in Norwich. Each minute cost money, so he kept calls short. Around 8 o'clock, he sat in his armchair. He put on extra clothes. He waited until 9 o'clock before turning on the heating. He read books he got from the library. The quiet evening was a regular part of his life now. It was a time of thought and careful living. 7. Going out. Aisha finished her long day at the hospital. It was past 7 o'clock and she felt tired. She looked at her phone. There were 3 new messages from her university friends. They wanted to go out for drinks at a city center bar that evening. Aisha thought about the cost. She knew drinks in the city were very expensive. A pint of beer or a glass of wine could cost £6 or £8. If she had 2 drinks and maybe some snacks, it would easily be 25 or 30 pounds. For her, this was almost a whole day's pay from her NHS salary. Her friends who worked in different jobs like finance did not have to think so much about these prices. But Aisha needed to make a budget. She had to decide if the social time was worth the money. She also worried if she looked like she could not afford to go out. Many young people like Aisha face these difficult choices now. Money problems are changing how they socialize. Aisha's parents, who were both teachers, could afford to go out regularly when they were young. They even bought their first house when they were Aisha's age. But Aisha, at 28, still lives in a shared flat. The idea of buying her own home seems far away without family help. Aisha decided to suggest a cheaper plan. She sent a message back to her friends. She asked them if they could meet for coffee instead of alcohol. A coffee would cost around £3.50. This was a much more affordable way to see everyone and chat. This way, she could still enjoy time with her friends without spending too much money. This change is typical for her generation. Young people are finding new, less expensive ways to have fun and connect. They might have picnics in a park instead of eating in restaurants. They choose to watch movies at home with friends instead of going to the cinema. Sometimes, just a walk together is enough. These activities are still good ways to spend time, but they show how economic difficulties make people adapt their social lives. They want to keep their friendships, but they must be smart about their spending. 8. What happens next? The day ended for Aisha, the Davies family, and Robert. Aisha, the young doctor, was tired. Her hospital shifts were demanding and staff were short. Her daily train travel was expensive. Like many young people, she chose cheaper ways to see friends, such as meeting for coffee instead of expensive bars. High costs for rent and low chances to buy a house made her generation's life different. In Wales, Sarah and Mark Davies finished their busy day. They carefully managed every pound as food prices rose. Their children's activities also needed close budgeting. They worried about future house payments when their mortgage rate would increase. Despite money worries, they worked hard together. Sarah often got help from neighbors for childcare, showing community support. Robert, in his quiet Suffolk village, spent his evening alone. Many local shops, like his old post office and the pub, had closed. This made it harder to get his pension and shop, with the nearest bank 7 miles away. His heating bills were very high. He missed community life but found ways to manage, planning trips and calling his daughter. This day clearly showed the great squeeze in Britain. Prices for food, transport, and utilities have risen sharply. At the same time, wages have not kept pace, making it hard for many. Services, especially in rural areas, are closing. This makes life more difficult. But the story also shows hope and strength. People find new ways to live. Aisha's friends adapt social lives. The Davies family cooks at home, grows food, and shares entertainment. Robert carefully manages finances. There is a strong sense of community, with people helping neighbors through childcare or informal support. Britain is changing. This time feels difficult, but it also makes people find new ways to live and connect. This could mean stronger community relationships and a greater focus on what truly matters. The quiet strength from ordinary people is helping the country adapt. What do you think these big changes will mean for everyday life in Britain in the years to come?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.